So you spoke wonderfully about compassion and also about self-compassion, about seeing all of us, including our very selves, as the beautiful people whom we are, created in God's image. And I'm wondering how this idea might be cultivated in ourselves such that we can develop that with our youth in our varied contexts for ministry. And a question that emerged in the chat window a little bit ago was how this lens might also work for folks who are not religious or who are not Christian.
Seth, do you want to say a little bit about the pluralistic portion of what we do, then I'll talk about the youth? All right, cool. I'll let you go first.
So I do want to say up front that this presentation was specifically designed because we are talking primarily to a Christian audience, primarily to youth group leaders. And so we have focused explicitly on the theological and Christian dimensions of the work we do and how it can be understood in that context. So we're not limited to that context. Compassion and our approach to anti-racism is broader than Christianity. And so right now we're working with the UCSD School of Public Health with some anti-racism training there, which is a secular context. And so our approach is usable and definitely helpful outside of a Christian context as well. So Chris, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's it. I think just recognizing that, we did this specifically for a primarily Christian audience. And so I think that's the best way to say it. We found it to try to be most persuasive to the people who are mostly going to be here. But if you're interested in the work that we do for secular audiences, totally feel free to reach out to us. Or if you want some more tips as to how you might have these conversations or navigate this space in a more in a secular environment. With regards to how these resources and tools can be used with youth specifically, I guess two things I want to say. First is before you try to do or try to begin to have these conversations with your youth, you really need to spend time working on yourself. So you kind of first got to begin with understanding your own racialization way before you start working with kids. You just fundamentally have to, because if you're not prepared, if you haven't done the work yourself, you're not really equipped to, I think, answer the questions that they inevitably will have. There's an amazing book called The First R. Again, it's written actually and co-authored by Joe Fegan, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the other author's name. It basically argues, and we have data to show that kids begin to understand racial difference around the age of 2. And so they already are thinking in ways in which, and noticing how race structures access, abilities, and these kinds of things. And so it's already on their mind. And so I guess the other thing I'll say is once you feel comfortable, ready to do it, don't assume that someone's too young to have this conversation, right? Do not assume that. You just actually just listen to what they're saying and notice how they are interacting with different groups and different people. The primary thing I would point you to is some resources that have been cultivated and crafted for young people. And probably the best one that is low cost, you can even find on Instagram because they've created Instagram that is pretty good and free because they've interested in making it accessible. It's called The Conscious Kid. And they have an Instagram site with a bunch of free stuff. They also have a paid subscription that you can get that's still pretty low cost. They have scholarships for people that are low income. And so this is a collective of parents and teachers for young children. So it's geared towards elementary through junior high. And it talks about books and resources and things of that nature to really engage these conversations with kids. I think that's the first step in terms of understanding your own racialization, equipping yourself with the particular resources, and then deciding if you want to have this conversation on a theological level or just kind of interpersonal level. Theologically, as youth leaders, I think the best way to begin this conversation is to talk about this notion of being created in the image of God and what that means, right? And to really say, well, what does it mean to be created in the image of God when you see people who are different from us? And we're finding out about what's happening in the world, and use that as a doorway to kind of help us and help young people to begin to think how other people are not viewed, even though we might say we should see them as a full image of God, but actually aren't necessarily viewed as people creating an image of God, and kind of scaffold it, I guess, based on in where that goes. I'm sorry, I know there's probably a lot more I can say, Joe, but I know we only got a few minutes left, so I probably should stop talking now.